All right, welcome back once more. This is Sunday edition here on KTN News. Let's get into a bit of politics now, and a lot has been happening in terms of political campaigns. Later on, we shall be having the NASA Brigade campaigning in Western Kenya in the county of Busia. Our senior political affairs reporter, Duncan Haimba, has been with them the whole week. Will be telling us what will be happening, and we'll be having that in our campaign trail edition of Choice 2017 with Yusuf Ibrahim from 2 p.m. all the way until 4 p.m. giving you the latest from the campaign trail. But what has been said this past week on the campaign trail? Let's start with something that has been a matter of discussion, especially on social media, and that is where Raila Odinga, the National Super Alliance presidential candidate, did allude to the fact that Jubilee were planning to use the military to rig the election. Let's listen into that.
Kama imeamua ni final. Nasikia? Tuliwaambia hatutaki ile ujanja ya kupeleka Nairobi na kufanya ukarabati. Sasa mahakama imekubaliana na sisi. Sasa wakora, sasa maraba yao mara hii itafichuka. Siku miezi ni ngapi? Siku yao ya 40 simefika.
As expected, Jubilee have reacted to this. Deputy President William Ruto moving very swiftly to rubbish those claims by Raila Odinga.
Achane na jeshi ya Kenya. We have a professional military. We should keep petty pedestrian politics out of our military.
This did make a bit of the campaign trail messages from the NASA and Jubilee sides this past week. What is your take on this?
Well, I would, in as much as maybe Raila Odinga has got evidence that the military is going to be deployed not to protect us from our external enemies, but in the political space, I think that was a lapse in Mr. Raila Odinga's judgment. If you've got an issue, especially around the military, and the Kenyan military is regarded all over the world as a very disciplined force. So if you've got issues around the military, you're not supposed to raise this at a public forum. Maybe you should have done a letter to the IBC or the relevant authorities instead of saying this in the public space. And even Donald Trump in the US was accused because when he was campaigning, he kept on saying all manner of ugly things around the Pentagon, around the intelligence community. And these are the very people you expect to work with if you become president. So for this one, I think it's a lapse on his judgment, and maybe it explains that his communication team, they need to be looking at his messaging well in advance before he says anything. Because when you look at opinion polls, when you speak to people, he's doing very well at this stage. But a mistake of this nature can compromise his win. And I think this is unacceptable.
Mutinda, Raila Odinga's allegations and the Deputy President's reaction, what's your take on that?
Probably, you see, the allegations were not substantiated, and the sensitivity of the matter is such that probably there should have been some substantiation of that kind, because we don't want to start politicking using our military. That one I want to agree. What is important is we have a constitution, and at times it's important for us to even go back and look at what the constitution says. So the role of the military in some of these things is very clear, and so far I don't think there is anything they've done that is in our knowledge to show that they are partisan in any way. And if there's anybody with evidence to that effect, then that should be brought out, probably in the right fora. But just throwing around words and now making the military a political issue, I think is taking political expediency too far. We need to be drawing lines. We need to know where to go and where not to go. Because to me that is very political. Even if you see the allegations and the response, it has been reduced to a political issue, yet it is really not a political issue. It is a legal matter. The role of the military in these things is very, very clear. We need to avoid politicizing some of the very sensitive aspects of our state structure.
Right, Ishmael, do not have a right to make those allegations.
Yeah, I think I think Honorable Raila Odinga did not say that the military have agreed to do anything. He is using his usual, if I call them quote unquote cunning jibe. is trying to hit hard on the Jubilee. He's telling them, I know the telephone calls you make, and probably doesn't have any evidence, by the way. He did not even say he has evidence, but these people know each other, my friend. When they say, I have seen you go to visit so-and-so, so Raila Odinga has to come out and make some statement to actually scare off his opponent. He has not hinted that the military in any way have acquiesced or accepted to listen to any side of the divide. That's one. Number two, I think that Kenya, we like doing things secretly. It is so simple in such a scenario for the military. They have their own spokespeople to come out. They have a spokesman sitting at the defense to come out and say, excuse us, we are performing our mandate and we shall never be swayed by any way. And if you say like that, I will believe that spokesman than I will believe Raila or Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta on this particular subject. But now they will be quiet, and then we will come here and make our comments. And papers will write, and then people will make more comments. I think it's good they come out and, clear the air and say, we are never easily swayed and we shall not be swayed. Don't forget that they have a mandate also internationally to convince other partners that they will not actually interfere into the domestic politics of our nation. Yes.
Husband, do you agree?
I think history probably is on Raila's side. Every other pronouncement that he's made has actually come to be proven true. But I will veer off from the military thing and focus on Raila Odinga and His Excellency the Deputy President. I think they are both football fans, and my message probably goes to Raila that when you're a football player, 11 against 11, it is the 15th minute. You know that you're playing. You're the captain of the side that is technically better, has a winning track record. You don't keep disturbing the referee that these guys have very, heavy tackles. No, keep the ball, pass faster, you will score the goal. And I want to believe that if NASA just believed in themselves, they are in a good side. If they keep the ball on the ground, play the ball, stop antagonizing the referee, the match commissar, the linesman, they are likely to score. Even if they are 2 goals down, if you're in a good side, you can score 3. Both of them are Arsenal fans, so they should identify with this. Play your game. If you can play your game and play it well, your chances of winning are very high.
All right.
No, but Ben, maybe we need to look at the genesis of Raila's conversations.
Yes.
Because there's been a training ongoing in Embakasi at a military barrack where the Kenya police and other people were invited to participate. And it was opened by Major Nkaiseri. And the person who is combining them is the regional commissioner in charge of Rift Valley. So I think that's where Raila is coming from, asking, what business do you have having people who are not necessarily military men going to a military barrack and training for whatever is going to happen after election? I think that's where the question is. And maybe we need an elaboration, as Ishmael has indicated, from DOD, whether or not the soldiers have been appointed as special officers for the purpose of this election.
Right.
And if my recollection is right, at no one time have you had military men appointed to be special officers, because the military men, as the case is, are supposed to spend their time at the barracks, not to start mixing with civilians, because they say if you allow military men to start mixing with civilians, then they can easily move away from their doctrine.
All right, so there are still questions that need to be answered.
Yeah.
All right.
And you see, the thing is, what stops the Department of Defense from making a statement saying this is our position? Although, again, the Chief of General Staff has indicated they're not going to participate in politics, but we need a more elaborate statement telling us maybe whether or not they've been gazetted as special officers and what their role is going to be.
All right. Let's of course, we shall be keeping an eye on that to see what happens there. Many people feeling that there's still some questions that need to be answered. Let's now move to Western Kenya, where the National Super Alliance is campaigning today. They have been there all the way since Wednesday in Kitale, in the county of Trans Nzoia. They did move to Bungoma yesterday. They are going to be in Busia today. The final rally expected to be in Mbale, if I'm not wrong. And of course, Duncan Hemba is keeping an eye on that for you. And one of the messages that has been spoken by the NASA principals and some of the Luya leaders led by Musalia Mudavadi is that is trying to urge the Western Kenya people to vote as a bloc. Let's listen into that.
Kura mnaenda kupiga ndugu zangu wa Luya. Hii ni kura ya mapinduzi ya unga. Hii ni kura ya mapinduzi ya unga. Walituletea njaa, na hiyo njaa ndiyo inayopeleka nyumbani. na kila Mkenya aamuke. Hapa kwetu jamii ya Mlembe wamekuwa wanacheka ati hatupigi kura sawa sawa.
Ikiwa wewe utauliza pesa kabla hujaenda kupiga kura, wewe ni mtu wa Jubilee. Kwa sababu tunataka turnout ya hapa iwe turnout ambayo watu watashangaa. Tunataka 90% voter turnout, 99% voter turnout. Hapo ndio tutaonyesha hawa jamaa kwamba Wakenya wamebadilika.
Husband, is this the kind of persuasion that the Western Kenya voting bloc needs to come out numbers? Analysts, all of you agree that there are good numbers there, but they don't necessarily come out to vote as one on voting day.
Yeah, I think the clincher for NASA in Western Kenya would be, to rally all their supporters, to turn up and vote. If they go beyond the last election's average, which was around 86, and get to 90 or 95, it would be a game changer. And it's the more reason why you see the NASA brigade, frequenting Western Kenya, and you see the Jubilee side of the wing also going to Western Kenya. So that if these guys are going to turn up and vote, then Jubilee is also trying to stake a claim. But I think the ball is on NASA's court to do as much as they can to get as many people to vote. Now, my take from, the pronouncements that we get from the principals would be that behind the scene, they need to do a lot more, because creating that euphoria when you have the principals go and campaign dissipates quite quickly when you leave Westerners on their own. So I want to believe that they have other campaign groups that go deep into the village, get guys to understand the reason why they need to vote. And of course, I don't think the Unga thing would convince any Westerner to vote, because it is not a big issue in Western Kenya. It is not a big issue in Luo Nyanza. I was in Luo Nyanza over the weekend. It is not, because people have Mahindi Choma, people go to the posho mill, and for them, whether there is no maize on the shelves of supermarkets is not a big thing. So NASA need to come out and dig into the villages, not in the stadia that we see them do.
All right. Ishmael, how does NASA ensure they have that Western Kenya bloc?
I think, talk from Bungoma, Busia, all the way to Migori, that Western Kenya region is practically a NASA stronghold, and there's no doubt about that. You could see when Moses Kuria and the group visited the Nyamira area, the kind of reception they got. It's as if people actually have decided. And the battleground is not as large as it has been. It is diminishing every time, and that cannot be between Busia and Migori. But the issue, like my brother is saying, is getting to convince everybody to understand the meaning of voting and coming to vote on the actual day. And that is really the homework they have. But in terms of whether Western Kenya is supporting this, NASA coalition, there is no doubt about it in my mind.
But Jubilee have been trying to make inroads there. What would you say about their efforts in Bungoma and Trans Nzoia and even Kakamega?
We saw good turnout in Bungoma, but again, the turnout, like Dismas has always analyzed here, is those are street people standing there enjoying. Probably they've come from the Shamba and they have nothing to do, and they actually want to look at you, some of them just mocking you. Those public gatherings are not anything to go by. You can't tell me that if Raila goes to Nyeri or Murang'a and gets all the people come out to see him, it translates to votes. Truly, that's not correct. So Western Kenya cities is actually already well locked under NASA, and this other side is locked under Jubilee. Now, convincing your people to come out to vote is the issue. And I do not ascribe to exact words as used by Honorable Musalia Mudavadi to say, if you accept money, you are a person of Jubilee.
If you're asking for money for you to vote.
Yes. But again, money is a factor. It will be spent here and there. I don't know how, but it will always be spent. The most important thing for, I think, the middle-class people should do is to ensure they get to convince people to come out and vote. With or without money, people should vote.
All right. What is your take on all this, Mutinda? The gentleman here seemed to think that you are totally locked out of Western Kenya.
No, not necessarily, but I want to agree that we are the underdogs there. But if we can improve on what we are doing, we can get a good chunk. And I always give you the history of the 2013 elections to support my point that Bungoma, especially in Bungoma and Trans Nzoia, because that is the area where in the last election, you know, the new Ford Kenya leader, party leader, endorsed Mudavadi. And Mudavadi in that region got more than 200,000 votes. So the question has been whether Honorable Eugene Wamalwa and the Governor Lusaka are in a position to now take these 200 or even more from Mudavadi, who got that kind of vote in the last election, to Uhuru. That is where the challenge is. But I think there is a fighting chance, not to get the majority of vote, but to get a good chunk. Why am I saying that? Because there are things that you can use to sell your message. You know, in NASA, in NASA, the biggest community in NASA is the Luya. Yet in the top positions that have the lineup, the presidential is not, the deputy presidential, and even in the, you know, supposed government makeup, they are not at the center of it yet. It's numerically. They are the single biggest voting bloc in NASA. I think if we, Jubilee, can ride on that, on top of the few things that we've done there as a government, and using our allies, the new Ford Kenya allies, we can get a good chunk. And it is good to remember that there is also internal rivalry. This is important in NASA to know this, that even in Bungoma, for instance, the Senate, one of the principles is vying for Senate. Yet within NASA, they are even challenging him. And that is across board. It is also happening here in Nairobi. But in Western, it is, you know, in Kakamega what is happening. Alwali is not a small person in NASA. He wants to be the governor, yet there is... So that kind of competition, if we, Jubilee, are keen on making sure that we ride on the fallout, we can get some good chunks of votes from that.
Ben, if you allow me, just...
Of course.
Listen, look, what Jubilee has lost, Jubilee has actually lost it in Western Kenya. Look at what they do in Kisii. They will go pick Honorable Kiangoi and probably the Minister for Education now being requested, please go in and talk on our behalf. That is a different approach you see in NASA. NASA, you actually find the MCAs, the more, you know, small, ordinary person down there is actually trying to really move around and convince people that as we wanted to vote at this direction. So, and that's why you were saying earlier that they've actually gone to the portal to show you what they do. That method of picking the top elitist people and the leaders is not working, especially for the people of Western Kenya. They want the masses to come and speak to them. Ordinary person, smaller boy and girl, to talk to the people. That's where actually Jubilee has already lost it. I wish they can buy my advice and look for the locals and the ordinary people and go to speak to the people.
Yes, this was.
But when it comes to Western Kenya, you need to look at the statements or replay that clip by Kalonzo Musyoka very well. In one of those rallies, he indicated that while Raila Odinga and him will be in charge of the presidency, the people who will actually be running the government will be Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula. Those are words which came from the mouth of Kalonzo Musyoka. And he was addressing the Luya nation, telling them the propaganda coming from Jubilee, like Kavemba has indicated, that they're not number one.
You're saying Kavemba is spewing
that's what he just indicated.
That's also propaganda from NASA by Kalonzo. You know, that's what he's not saying.
That's what he just indicated. I'm merely quoting what...
All of it is propaganda.
He's quoting propaganda from Kalonzo to appease the Luya nation.
And he indicated to them the people who will be running the nation is actually going to be Musalia Mudavadi and Wetangula. And when you look at the position, the Premier Cabinet Secretary, he'll be in charge of coordination of the government, he'll be in charge of internal security, and then there'll be Wetangula. That's the first message. When Esbon says that you can ignore the Unga situation in Western Kenya, it's well known. Maybe it's an anthropological issue that Luyas have got a very high affinity for Ugali. So when you're depriving them of that Ugali that they love, they're going to register offense. And for the longest time, we've ever been told that the Luyas are not going to be voting in one particular direction. And as Ishmael has indicated, it seems right now for Western Kenya, the train has left the station because the big tribal leaders, Musalia Mudavadi and Wetangula, are pulling in the same direction. Now, when you go to Kakamega, you have Boni Kalwale and Oparanya. That, in fact, works in the interest of Raila Odinga. Because when Kalwale is going to mobilize his supporters, when they go and vote, they'll not go vote for Ben Kalwale and ignore the NASA presidential candidates. The same thing happens for Oparanya. And there was a similar situation in Bungoma when the two candidates from Ford Kenya and ODM were fighting in the presence of Raila Odinga. And when you look at Raila's body language, when those two guys are fighting, it's very happy. Because when the ODM supporters go to the polling station, they'll vote for him. When the Ford Kenya guys go to the polling station, they're going to vote for him. So for Western Kenya, and even including Kisii, the train has left the station. For Kisii, it's even very disappointing that one of the cabinet ministers, Dr. Matiang'i, is on record as having told the people in the Kisii nation, please vote for me so that I retain my position, or rather, please vote for President Kenyatta so that I retain my position in the cabinet. So people began to wonder, when did, as a nation, did we take a decision that you are the one to represent us in the...
All right, let me ask you, let me slide to you.
There's something I want to say. In opposing my point, he has supported that there is indeed concerns about the inclusivity of Western in this NASA arrangement. That is why Kalonzo specifically addresses the issue. Because it is existent. He's just confirmed that. He wants to counter the point using that, but to me it is evidence that that issue is real. That is why Kalonzo has to go out of his way and tell lawyers that actually the people who are going to be run, of course that's a lie. Who are they going to be reporting to? We know where the buck stops. The Constitution is very clear. The president is the head of government and head of state, and the deputy the number 2. So these sentiments about them running, they are just that. It's just sentiments. So the truth of the matter is that the government, if indeed NASA wins, in the very unlikely event that we win, it will still be headed by Raila, deputized by Kalonzo. And that issue is very much alive. I'm just telling you that the issue, as spoken by Kalonzo and as brought out by my friend here, is evidence that that issue is really in Western.
Before we come to you, husband, let me ask you something that he has asked, something that has been talked about. That is, Moses Wetangula is running for Senate and he's a principal in the NASA lineup. And yet ODM put for him a candidate in Wycliffe Wangamati. Isn't that like trying to put obstacles in one of the principles' way? That is something that people have asked, especially Jubilee people.
Well, I hold no brief for Moses Wetangula, but I would imagine that's probably democracy alive and kicking within NASA. That you could be a principal, but if there's somebody interested in your position, they'll come and give you a fight. But if I were Moses Wetangula and I was committed to NASA, I would have not run for the Senate. I would have been like Musalia Mudavadi. I spend all my time at the national level campaigning for this, so that you know that all your eggs are in one basket. And the guy who is running against Moses Wetangula must be giving him a nightmare, must be giving him sleepless nights. Yeah, but I think it was a lapse again of judgment on his part.
Is Wetangula running as well as Isaac Ruto also running for governorship? Are they not sure if
No, I think the point is very clear. You know, the fact that they are running does not necessarily mean that, you know, they are putting 2 feet in 2 different places. No. The issue is very simple, that Ford Kenya has a stake, just like Chama cha Mashinani has a stake. So it doesn't have to be Governor Isaac Ruto, neither does it have to be Senator Moses Wetangula. I mean, he could actually win the senatorial seat, and probably that is what he's thinking, that I would win this. Then, after the election, I can give that slot to another person in Ford Kenya. Same to Governor Isaac Ruto, you know. The question is not whether he takes that position or not, but the point is that position will be preserved for the party. But maybe coming back to the argument that Kavemba is trying to advance, that Dismas is actually buttressing his point, I think I want to agree with Kavemba that to a large extent that there is something that is at stake that Jubilee can actually pounce on, to the extent that there is this infighting, you know. So there's something that Jubilee can actually get. But again, to re-emphasize what Dismas is saying, for Raila Odinga, whether these guys are fighting or not, going to the top, there is only one person.
Right.
There is only Raila Odinga.
All right.
But then coming back, maybe I should mention, in Kisii, I think what he mentioned about Kisii is very important. I think the Jubilee side of the campaign team has realized that, you know, using these political big names is not going to help. And they are trying to penetrate the grassroots, you know. And I think the introduction of Anthony Kibagendi, who was probably frustrated at NASA, is creating some ripples. Whether it will translate to votes is just a question of time.
All right. All right. Interesting.
But it's important to...
I don't want to make this a kissy discussion. But
no. It cannot be a kissy discussion.
We are outnumbered here.
Yeah, it cannot be a kissy discussion. But I want to go back to Western Kenya because I've got no interest in the kissy nation. I have to go back to Western Kenya.
All right.
When Jubilee says that for us, you are better off working with us, there is not a lawyer man in the Jubilee administration right now who is running for president or who is a running mate. So for them, they actually lose nothing in ignoring Jubilee and voting for NASA. Actually, the bets are much better within the NASA framework.
All right.
There's something I want to say about internal competition
that
has not been brought out. You know, everybody wants to assume, for convenience sake, that this will work well towards mobilizing for the presidential candidate. But the truth of the matter is this: some of the sentiments that are being used to show why me and not the other person are such that they are going to be counterproductive. That is the truth of the matter. I have seen some clips that are quite, very divisive politics because of that internal rivalry within NASA. And I am certain these are human beings. At the end of the day, it will have some effect, especially those who will feel like probably the presidential candidate is having a preference and the preference is not their choice. Those people, they're human. They might feel like the only way to hit back is through the ballot, and that way Jubilee will get some votes.
All right, let's flip the coin now and talk about the Jubilee side and what they have been focusing on in the campaign trail. And yesterday they were in what is perceived to be one of their strongholds, that is the larger Mount Kenya East area, that is Meru, a place that was visited by NASA in the last week. And these are some of the messages that the President Uhuru Kenyatta and his team passed on in Meru. Let's listen in.
Hatuna uadui na mtu yeyote. Tunaelewana? Sisi haja yetu ni tushindane na wale ambao wanataka kutuletea taabu katika taifa letu, na hawa ni wale watu ya naso wa huko. Au mnataka kitendawili ingie upande huu? Unajua anazunguka anasema ati watu ya Lare, watu ya Meru ati watampatia kura safari hii. Kuna mambo ya kitendawili hapa Lare? Kuna mambo ya kitendawili hapa? Hebu nionyeshe ya kwamba hapa hakuna kitendawili ambayo inatembea.
Still on that campaign trail, Jubilee are saying that NASA has no votes. Let's listen into that.
Onekana hawa wenzetu hawako tayari kwa uchaguzi. Sijui kama mwana nyinyi mko tayari kwa uchaguzi.
Alianza akalalamika commissioners ya IBC, akalalamika BVR, akalalamika sijui Chepukati, akalalamika ballot papers. Saa hii analalamika ati kura itaibiwa. Kura gani itaibiwa na yeye hana kura? Hii ni mtu ya kuanguka. Hii mtu ya kuanguka asubuhi.
So that is on the campaign trail from the Jubilee side. They were in Meru. Meru has been very open-minded recently, according to people on the ground there. NASA having been received rather well. What is your take on Jubilee trying to consolidate that part of what was very much part of their vote basket in 2013?
Now, looking at this trip, two things come out. Number one, President Kenyatta has got a very strong control over the Meru community. And you could even see when he's speaking, he creates a very good emotional connection. So for the people at some stage you are saying that Meru is going to turn into a NASA zone, I think that's a pipe dream. Then number two, the deputy president clearly has got the gift of the gab. When he's given the opportunity to speak, he knows he's saying the wrong thing or even his propaganda, but he does it with so much good force that for somebody who doesn't understand the Meru politics can actually believe that Raila does not have a vote. But now the underlying issue is the reaction of the crowd to what the president said when he started campaigning for Kiraitu Murungi. And you know, for an audience that the president had held captive for a long time, all of a sudden when they had the name of Kiraitu Murungi, they said no. They said, when you're coming to Meru next time, come and look for your presidential votes. And do not tell us about Jubilee in Meru. Come and request for us to vote for you as a presidential candidate. But when it comes to other positions, we are going to take a decision. And that's where Governor Munya comes in. And you could see that Governor Munya was not present, but the crowd was very warm towards his candidature. And I think for Meru, one could easily say that the train has left the station as far as Kiraitu Murungi is concerned. And probably Kiraitu Murungi regrets two things. Number one, deciding to run for governor in Meru. Number two, putting Jubilee together. Because when he decided to abandon the so-called bus, the people in Meru were very furious. And at the end of this trip, I think wherever Governor Munya is seated, he's probably a very happy man, smiling, knowing that for him it's a wrap.
But does he have the numbers? Kiraitu has been priding himself of having the all-important Imenti vote.
But when you look at that crowd, which you could see was heavily mobilized, because most of them were branded Jubilee, you would actually imagine that Kiraitu Murungi participated in mobilizing that crowd. And you would imagine that the people who are mobilized are supposed to be his supporters, only for them to embarrass him while the president is right there. Because when Ruto, the man gift of the gab, give him credit, and maybe needs to educate some NASA politicians on how to deliver the public message, when he requested Kiraitu Murungi to come and speak, the guys were saying no, they don't want to listen to Kiraitu Murungi. So whether or not you got the numbers from Imenti, Kiraitu Murungi, I think on that particular night, he had a very long night.
Mutinda should speak last, so that he can collect our views. What I want to say, because he's Jubilee. What I actually want to say, it is always good for a reasonable person to congratulate a person who is smart, even though they do not belong to your club or you don't think or you don't ascribe to their thinking. I think Honorable William Ruto is an exceptional politician in my humble view. He is a person who can read the mood. I picked this from the time when he was recently was in either Marakwet or Francis Nzoia area, where they had a governor called Toglos. Yeah, Marakwet, yes. And actually people were against him completely. If you have done public speaking, you know that if you are an ordinary small type guy, you could actually sink because you've brought the president and people are telling you outright no. Look at his reaction at that time. Then you know you have a very strong-hearted deputy president and a politician. Now for Meru, he also has actually put up a very brave face. But in actual sense, their decision to call for 6-piece all the way a suit has actually worked against them. Because what the head of state also recently was saying, that just in Kiambu and in Eldoret, we want Jubilee all the way to the MCN. Now that is a disadvantage for Jubilee, because what you do with people like Munya, who have a large following and they want to vote you in as president, and you are telling them, no, vote for our person and not for Munya. Obviously, that's a loss. So I think that is the mistake Jubilee has done for Meru, where they are insisting that people have to vote in uniform. And they have also done that in Eldoret, where they are assuming that, that Buzeki is not a power. And they are actually going to lose a good number of votes, instead of having said, okay, if you like people from these other parties, do not forget us. So,
Hesbon, what do you think about it? Is this going spectacularly wrong for Kiraitu Murungi?
Well, I sympathize with Kiraitu Murungi because I've been a big fan of Kiraitu Murungi, the Orengos of this world, Gitobwi Manyara, for the mere fact that, they've actually abandoned their ideological framework, and they've been forced and succumbed to the politics of ethnicity in this country, to the extent that now we have a situation where the Deputy President, William Ruto, is inviting Kiraitu Murungi. I didn't foresee this when I was growing up as a primary school kid in the 1990s. But what I want to say is that I think in Nyeri, it is not over for Kiraitu Murungi for the simple reason that... In Meru. For the simple reason that I think he's in the right party, and to the extent that people are going to vote for President Uhuru Kenyatta, he's likely, to get a number of votes from the Igembe, the Chuka, the Tigania. Then you combine with the populace Imenti, he's likely, to win. And just like Dismas said, he probably is regretting the fact that he went for the gubernatorial race. He was better off as a representative. But I think having said that, there is something interesting about what the deputy president and the president did in Meru. One, they reaffirmed the fact that just like Western, Meru is in Jubilee. I mean, there's no doubt about that. If there is any spillover that NASA would get, it is just the same as what Jubilee would get because of the infighting in Western Kenya. But the fact that the president and the deputy president steered off from endorsing Kiraitu actually works for Kiraitu. that now he is not considered as a project of the Jubilee administration. And the contest between Kiraitu and Honorable Peter Munya is going to be an even contest. And in that contest, I think they've done Kiraitu a favor. From that humiliation, I think there is something that they've managed to communicate. The fact that the gubernatorial race is a local affair. You guys can deal with it.
All right, all right.
Yeah, I want to...
Final word on this.
I give you a Jubilee.
The thing is, in Meru is still Jubilee at the presidential level. But just like I said about NASA having a challenge in managing their internal competition, then in some regions like you saw what happened in Nyeri. Now it has come out again in Meru. And you know, this one is really going to be very difficult for Kiraitu, and I'll tell you why. Because I think the problem actually is Kiraitu himself. You know, in the last election, Kiraitu hyped Meru nationalism. He even gave them a political party. And you know, they bought it. They elected Munya, the governor, on that political party, and they elected him as senator and some other MPs and MCAs. Then all of a sudden, at his convenience, he decides that now that is no longer the line. Yet his people had bought into it. Munya sees an opportunity and decides to ride on what they had started with him. And somehow you've seen the kind of support is getting from the ground. That is one. Then you know that can look very selfish amongst your people. You've convinced them that it is strategic for us to have a political vehicle, so that at the national table we can always negotiate. Then all of a sudden you change that line. Then people think like, okay, so you think we are your, to just be taken around at your own convenience. And I think Munya has really been riding on that. So the bus of 2013 is the PNU of 2017. And the second thing is about the incumbency. Munya is the incumbent. And you know, this incumbency, this is real. There are 47 governments besides the national government. These people have got people that they've been working with, people that they've employed. They've done stuff in every corner of the county. In the process, they've built networks. So it's not going to be a pushover. And thirdly and lastly is the youth factor, generational transition. He's quoting Kiraitu when he was in primary. You can imagine, I also started hearing of Kiraitu when I was in primary, and that was before him. It was in the 90s, mine was in the 80s. So you can imagine there is a generation that does not have that kind of attachment to Kiraitu, and probably because of they've grown up during the time of devolution and during Munya's time, is managed to capture. So all those factors make it very delicate for Jubilee. Jubilee, we need to be very careful in Meru, so that we do not antagonize our people and make them feel like they should punish us, just like we were talking of the internal competition in NASA. That is the only danger. But there is no danger for Jubilee at the presidential level in Meru. It is just a matter of how do we manage this delicate internal competition in our stronghold.
All right, in the last 6 or so minutes, let's switch gears again and focus on the county of Machakos. And that is, of course, the gubernatorial battle between the incumbent Dr. Alfred Mutua and Wavinya Ndeti, the Wiper candidate who was finally put back on the ballot paper by the courts. Let's listen in to her reaction to that.
Lakini mimi ningeuliza tu IBC, they need to be fair. Kwa sababu kama wangefuata, kama wangeuliza registrar of political parties vizuri na wauliza maswali, hatungefika hapa. Lakini mimi nasema yaliondoa sipite. Kenya is bigger than Chebukati, Kenya is bigger than Wavinya.
And that is kind of becoming a national movement, yaliondoa sipite. Anyway, Dismas, where does this put Machakos politics? I mean, she has been in all sorts of battles from the Wiper nominations with Bernard Kiala and her being struck off, the ballot by IBC, being put back on by the courts. How is the battle looking like in Machakos from this latest incident?
This is where you generally use the term the winners and the losers. The principal loser here is Dr. Alfred Mutua, because when you look at the politicians who had expressed interest in becoming governor for Machakos, it's only Wavinya Ndeti who was the political capital and resources to give a serious challenge for for Mutua. And I think when Mutua saw that clip, despite the fact that Swahili needs a bit of polishing, she made a very strong point that she's going to go for this seat. That's number one. And then number two, she's created a perception has been created in Machakos that this lady is so strong that everybody is coming up with their swords and they want to fight her. She sits in a very comfortable position like a Joe in Mombasa. So for Machakos, it's very easy to say that it's a wrap. For Wavinya Ndeti, all she needs to do is just make sure that our voters come out and vote. And for Dr. Mutua, that will be the end to her political career.
Wow, that's harsh. That's, we wait to see what happens there. Mutinda, it's your adopted county. What is your take on what's happening there?
I think the honest truth is that Wavinya stands a very good chance of defeating Mutua. And it has probably not... It does not have much to do with Wavinya, like it has to do with Mutua himself, because there are things that Mutua has done that have made him quite, the people have not received some of those things well, because there are issues first of the performance. One thing is Mutua is very good at optics. He knows how to do things that are high-catching. But, at the county level, that is where now I want to agree with Dismas that you should be felt more than you should be. Because, we have a very good pack, for instance, better than any other probably in the country. We have, our stadium came up very fast, but you need to know that politically, all those projects are in one constituency, Machakos Town. Machakos County has 8 constituencies. Then there is the road, the 33 kilometers road, it is in another constituency, Mwala. Those are the main pilot projects for Mutua. Most of these other things that he's been claiming on media that he's done 300 balls, and that is not the truth, because that is our county, and 300 balls in a county that has 40 wards means that on average every county, every ward should have at least 7, and 7 new balls in Machakos, where what is the issue? You will have to know that they are there. So there are issues about that. But again, Machakos happens to be, majority of Machakos are in NASA. And Mutua openly, probably now more than anything else, Mutua openly came out and supported my party, Jubilee. And I think at that point,
political suicide?
That was really, that is going actually to be the determining factor. Because there are people who felt like he did not, he should have just gone with his chap-chap, because he understood that there are differences with Kalonzo, but going out of his, they felt like he has spited them. They felt like it was some sort of disrespect, considering that he knows their sentiments, political sentiments, and yet he openly goes to, so probably that he might pay for that.
His performance and supporting your party
openly might, he might pay
Ishmael, very quickly, what is your verdict in Machakos?
No, I think that people don't look at political leaders' performance and their track record. They are more interested in which party you belong to and who is your party leader. Basically, I cannot say that Mutua is that bad, whether now or when he was in government or when he was in Chama Mandelo Chap. But the issue, I think, for now is where the county wants to take its politics, and they are all rallying behind Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka. And anybody singing another song, I think, has a big mountain to climb.
What is your verdict, Sesbon?
I think looking at Honorable Wavinya Ndeti and his political history, you'd understand that she is a heavyweight. She's managed to remain in both the local mobilization activities and at the national level. You remember in 2007, he actually went against the grain. He was not in Wiper. Actually, she was locked out of Wiper completely, but she still managed to win the Kathiani parliamentary seat. So to that extent, and the way she has managed, through many things to be in the, both mainstream and legacy media, including the Yaliondwela Sipite thing, is giving her traction and people are talking about her. That, of course, puts her in a very high pedestal. But then I think the biggest thing for Wavinya that would carry the day for her is the fact that Mutua has done a lot, but has managed to create so many enemies. I mean, everyone has an issue with Mutua. The entire NASA brigade, Senator Mudhama has an issue with Mutua. And then you have Wavinya coming in strongly, and I think everything is just working against him.
There's something Wakili said that I think I should just put straight, because Machakos happens to be a very interesting county. Out of the 8 parliamentary seats, only 3 are in Wiper. I thought that is important for you to note. The only thing that I also need to be honest about is that even the 5 who won on other party tickets were supportive of CORD in that election. And that's why I said Mutua would probably, they're quite liberal, you know. Out of the 40 MCAs, only 20 are Wiper. These are facts, you can counter-check them, because that's my adopted county, like you said. But the fact that he now went ahead and endorsed at the president, I think that one, because going by the passage, like I'm saying, if you can imagine, 5 out of 8 managed to be elected.
Very
as
open-minded, but
yes, but when it comes to the national level, because of that, because even Waivinya last time, she was on a CCU ticket, but she supported Raila. She got more than 90,000 votes. Now the question is, when you now openly support a presidential candidate that is in the minority in that region, how does that work out?
All right, thank you, gentlemen. That is where we leave it for the show this morning. Many thanks. Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst, Jubilee strategist Mutinda Kavemba here, and of course, lawyer Ishmael Nyaribo and political analyst Hesbon Owila. Thank you. Wonderful show. Always a pleasure having this conversation with you guys. So we leave it on the program. Be sure to join us every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. to 12 noon as we give you the most qualified political analysis in this country. I'm Ben Kitili. Bye for now.